Yohannes IV, born Lij Kassai Mercha and formerly known in English as King John, was Emperor of Ethiopia from 1871 until his death in 1889. Early life. Yohannes IV was born at Mai-Bihar, a village then within the jurisdiction of Endete province. He was the son of Mercha, Shum of Tembian, and his wife Woizero Silas Dimsu, who was the daughter of Dijasmish Dimsu Debab of Endete, the nephew of the powerful Raswald Selassie of Endete. Yohannes could claim Solomonic blood through the line of his paternal grandmother Woizero Workuha Kalakristus of Adwa, who was the granddaughter of Ras Mikhail Sahul, and his wife Astara Yasu, daughter of Empress Menshub and her lover Melmorla Yasu. Yohannes could also claim Solomonic descent more distantly through his father's Tembian family, also through a female link to the dynasty. Amatoselassie's father Dimsu of Endata belonged to the family which in late 18th and early 19th centuries had held overlordship of Tigray, and her mother descended from the aristocratic line of the Shums of Agame. Rise to power. In 1868, at the time of Emperor Tewodros II's suicide in response to the British rescue mission under Sir Robert Napier, Dijasmish Kassai controlled the province of Tigray. With Tewodros's death, he became one of the three most powerful princes in Ethiopia along with Wagshum Gobes of Lastar and Wagan King Menelik of Shoa. Kassai was in fact Wagshum Gobaz's prodigy and ally. Wagshum had married his sister Dinkanesh Mercha and was instrumental in helping Kassai rise to power in Tigray. The British expedition had left Yohannes a great deal of ordnance, however, and Kassai refused to pay homage to Wagshum when he declared himself the Emperor Tekel Georges II at Sokotar in Wag. At first Tekel Georges attempted to mollify him by naming him Re'esi Mequenant. Kassai promptly began using the title but continued to dispute Tekel Georges's right to supremacy or homage. Kassai was aided in his defiance by the recent death of Salamat, the Abuna of the Ethiopian Church. Tekel Georges could not be formally crowned until his replacement was appointed by the Coptic Pope in Cairo, a process which might take years. In fact, Kassai took the initiative. He had gathered the funds to pay Pope Cyril for the ordination and travel of the new archbishop. Abuna and Natchez arrived by June 1869, but took Kassai's side in the dispute. After consolidating support with Adil of Gojam and Menelik of Shewa through marriage and pacifying Wollo through force, he invaded Tigray across the Takaza River in 1871. Dijasmish Kassai met the emperor near Adwa on the 11th of July 1871, capturing and deposing him. The emperor died in captivity the next year. Following Tekel Georges's death, his widow settled in Mekelle at Yohannes's court, continuing to be accorded the title and dignity of an empress throughout his reign. At Natchez crowned Kassai emperor at Aksum. The exact date of his crowning is not very clear and there are three different dates given by scholars. The 12th of January, 28 January, and the 12th of February of 1872. In addition, in one of the emperor's letters to the Queen of England, he states that he assumed power in November. He took the name and title of emperor, becoming the first emperor crowned in Aksum since Fasilides in 1632. Adil of Gojam soon after submitted to Yohannes and recognized him as emperor. Adil was rewarded with the titles of Ras and of King of Gojam. Adil was also given the new name of Tekel Haymanot Tesema, war with Ottoman Egypt. Throughout his reign, Yohannes was embroiled in military struggles on his northern frontiers. First was from Khedive Pasha of Egypt, who sought to bring the entire Nile River basin under his rule. The Egyptians flirted with encouraging Menelik of Shewa against the emperor, but earned Menelik's enmity by marching from the port of Zila and occupying the city-state of Harar on the 11th of October 1875. Both Menelik and Yohannes had regarded Harar as a renegade province of Ethiopia, and Egyptian seizure of the emirate was not welcome to either of them. The Egyptians then marched into northern Ethiopia from their coastal possessions around the port of Massawa. Yohannes pleaded with the British to stop their Egyptian allies, and even withdrew from his own territory in order to show the Europeans that he was the wronged party and that the Khedive was the aggressor. However, Yohannes soon realized that the Europeans would not stop the Khedive of Egypt, and so he gathered up his armies and marched to meet the Egyptian force. The two armies met at Gundit on the morning of the 16th of November 1875. The Egyptians were tricked into marching into a narrow and steep valley and were wiped out by Ethiopian gunners surrounding the valley from the surrounding mountains. Virtually the entire Egyptian force, along with its many officers of European and North American background, were killed. News of this huge defeat was suppressed in Egypt for fear that it would undermine the government of the Khedive. A new Egyptian force was assembled and sent to avenge the defeat at Gundit. The Egyptians were defeated again at the Battle of Gura, where the Ethiopians were led again by the emperor and his loyal general, the capable Alula Enguda. This victory was followed by Menelik's submission to Yohannes on the 20th of March 1878, and in return Yohannes recognized Menelik's hereditary right to the title of King of Shewa, and recrowned him on March 26. Yohannes took this opportunity to tie the Shuan king more closely to him by arranging for Menelik's daughter Zudachu to be married to his own son and heir, Rasariya Selassie. Emperor Yohannes also convened a general council of the Ethiopian Church at Baromeda later in 1878, which brought an end to the ongoing theological dispute in the local church. Christians, Muslims and pagans were given respectively 2, 3 and 5 years to conform to the council's decisions. Non-Christians were forbidden from participating in the government unless they converted and were baptized. The Muslims were given 3 months, while the pagans had to become Christians immediately. Having concluded that Wollo was worth a mass, as Harold Marcus Riley puts it, his retainer Ras Muhammad of Wollo became Ras Mikhail of Wollo, and the emperor stood as his godfather at his baptism. The new convert was given Menelik of Shoa's other daughter, Shoarega Menelik, as his wife. Yohannes went one step further, and pressured Menelik to expel all the Roman Catholic missionaries from Shewa. However, this time, instead of a single archbishop, he requested that Patriarch Cyril send 4 to serve the large number of Christians in Ethiopia, who arrived in 1881. They were led by Abuna Petros as archbishop, Abuna Matawas for Shewa, Abuna Lucas for Gojam and Abuna Marcos for Gondar. Abuna Marcos died shortly after arriving, so his diocese was included with that of Abuna Antnachus. It was the first time that the Coptic Patriarch of Alexandria had appointed 4 bishops for Ethiopia. War with Sudan. When Muhammad Ahmad proclaimed himself the Mahdi, and incited Sudan into a long and violent revolt, his followers successfully either drove the Egyptian garrisons out of Sudan, or isolated them at Suakin and at various posts in the south. Yohannes agreed to British requests to allow these Egyptian soldiers to evacuate through his lands, with the understanding that the British Empire would then support his claims on important ports like Massawa on the Red Sea to import weapons and ammunition, in the event that Egypt was forced to withdraw from them. This was formalized in a treaty signed with the British at Adwa known as the Hewitt Treaty. The immediate result was that the wrath of the Mahdi fell upon Ethiopia. Ras Alula defeated an invading Mahdist army at the Battle of Kufit on the 23rd of September 1885. About the same time, Italy took control of the port of Massawa, frustrating Ethiopian hopes and angering Yohannes. Yohannes attempted to work out some kind of understanding with the Italians, so he could turn his attention to the more pressing problem of the Mahdists. Although Ras Alula took it upon himself to attack Italian units that were on both sides of the ill-defined frontier between the two powers, domestic problems increased when the Neguses of both Gojam and Shewa rebelled against Yohannes. and the emperor had to turn his attention from the encroaching Italians to deal with his rebellious vassals. Yohannes brutally crushed the Gojam rebellion. But before he could turn his attention to Sheh, news arrived that the Mahdist forces had sacked Gondar and burned its holy churches. He marched north from Gojam to confront the armies of the Mahdi. Death and descendants. Evidence suggests that Emperor Yohannes had acted rashly and had made himself vulnerable, going beyond enemy lines in range to enemy shots as victory was going to his side. Mortally wounded from a gunshot, he had been carried to his tent, where he announced that his nephew Ras Mengesha was actually his natural son, and named him in his heir. He died hours later. Although the Ethiopian army had almost annihilated their opponents in this battle, hearing that their ruler had been slain shattered their morale and allowed the Mahdists to counterattack, scattering the Ethiopian forces. Yohannes' body was carried back to Tigray guarded by a small party, who were overtaken by the Mahdist troops of Zeki Tumul near the Atbara River and who captured the sovereign's body. Augustus B. Wilde, who claimed to have heard the story from a priest who managed to escape the slaughter, wrote how Yohannes' uncle Ras Araya stood beside the body of his dead master with a few of his soldiers and the bravest of the king's servants, who had lost their all, and had no more prospects to live for. Ras Araya was last seen standing alongside the box containing the king's body, after having expended all his ammunition, with his shield and sword in his hands, defending himself, till at last he was speared by a dervish from behind, and died fighting gamely like the fine old warrior that he was. According to Wilde, as he saw death come, Ras Araya announced that he was now old and done for, that his time had come, and it was useless at his age to serve another master that he knew little about, and it was better to die like a man fighting unbelievers than like a mule in a stable. The Mahdists brought the emperor's body back to their capital at Omdurman, where the head was put on a pike and paraded through the streets. Although a group of Tigrian nobles led by Ras Alula attempted to promote the claim of Ras Mengesha Yohannes as emperor, many of the dead monarch's other relatives on both the Endete and Tembian sides of his family objected and went into open rebellion against Mengesha. Many refused to accept Ras Mengesha as the son of Yohannes, having long known him as his nephew. Tigray was torn asunder by the rebellions of various members of the emperor's family against Mengesha and each other. Menelik of Shehwar took advantage of Tigrian disorder, and after the Italians occupied Hamasien, he was proclaimed emperor of Ethiopia as Menelik II. The death of Yohannes reduced the influence of Tigrayans in the Ethiopian government and opened the way for Italians to occupy more districts previously held by Tigrayan nobles. The seizures made by the Italians at this time ultimately resulted in the creation of the colony of Eritrea and the defeat of Italy at the Battle of Adar at the hands of Emperor Menelik II. The Tigrian nobility retained influence at the imperial court of Menelik and his successors, although not at the level they enjoyed under Yohannes IV. The descendants of Yohannes ruled over Tigray as hereditary princes until the Ethiopian Revolution, and the fall of the monarchy in 1974 ended their rule. Araya Selassie Yohannes, Eastern Tigray. There are two lines of descent from Yohannes IV, one legitimate, and one natural. The legitimate line is through his elder son, Ras Araya Selassie Yohannes. Araya Selassie Yohannes was born by his wife Wulit Selassie. The son of Araya Selassie Yohannes was Ras Gugsa Araya Selassie. His son was the infamous Dejazmish Haile Selassie Gugsa, who governed eastern Tigray in the 1930s and was married to Emperor Haile Selassie's daughter, Princess Zeneb Haile Selassie. However, following the death of his wife, Dejazmach Haile Selassie Gugsa's relationship with Emperor Haile Selassie deteriorated, and in 1936, Dejazmach Haile Selassie became the first high-ranking Ethiopian nobleman to defect to the Italians when the fascist forces invaded Ethiopia. The people of Mekelle ransacked his house when this news was revealed. He was elevated to the title of Ras by the King of Italy. However, following the liberation of Ethiopia in 1941, Haile Selassie Gugsa was placed under house arrest and regarded as a traitor. Emperor Haile Selassie refused to acknowledge the title of Ras granted to his former son-in-law by the King of Italy, and so he reverted to the title of Dijazmach. He was freed by the Derg regime in 1974 following the fall of the monarchy. He died shortly thereafter. There are other descendants of Emperor Yohannes IV in this legitimate line, but because of the wartime actions of Dijazmach Haile Selassie Gugsa, this branch of the family fell into disfavor at the imperial court and lost its position and influence. Mengesha Yohannes Western Tigray II natural line is through Ras Mengesha Yohannes and is the better-known line. Although Ras Mengesha Yohannes ended his days under house arrest for his repeated rebelling against Emperor Menelik II, Ras Mengesha's son Ras Sayum Mengesha first became governor of Western Tigray, and following the treason of his cousin Dijazmach Haile Selassie Gugsa, became governor of all of Tigray in 1936. He commanded troops against the Italians, but was forced to surrender and spent most of the Italian occupation under house arrest in Addis Ababa. Following the return of Emperor Haile Selassie in 1941, Ras Sayum was restored to his governorate of Tigray, recognized as the hereditary prince of that province. Ras Sayum Mengesha was killed during the abortive coup by the imperial bodyguard in 1960. And was succeeded by his son Ras Mengesha Sayum, who served as governor and hereditary prince of Tigray until the 1974 revolution toppled the Ethiopian monarchy. Ras Mengesha Sayum is married to Princess Aida Diste, a granddaughter of Emperor Haile Selassie, and is the current head of the Tigrayan branch of the Solomonic dynasty. Mengesha Sayum is the last person alive today who bears the title of Leul Ras. Full title. His full title was, His Imperial Majesty John IV, Conquering Lion of the Tribe of Judah, King of Zion, King of Kings of Ethiopia and Elect of God, or in Ethiopian, Geez, Sik Gimawai, Moa, and Basazarim Nagadi Yehuda, Nigusatesian, Nigusa Nagist Ethiopia, Sayuma, Ixiar Bibliography. Henzer, Paul B. Yohannes IV and Menelik II. The Empire Restored, Expanded, and Defended. Layers of Time. A History of Ethiopia. New York. St. Martin's Press. ISBN 0-312-22719-1. Lewis, David Levering. Pawns of Pawns. The Race to Fashoda. New York. Olympic Marketing Corp. ISBN 1-55584-058-2.